In this video, we're going to go through some items that every single necromancer should be getting their hands on. These are items that are super useful for anyone using necromancy, and items that if I didn't have these, if I was starting over, I would make sure to unlock these along the way. So you can check them off and see if you've got them yourselves, and let me know in the comments how many of these you need or how many of these you already have. That being said, let's go. Okay, so first up, we're going to be talking about the best in slot aura, which it isn't exactly an item, but it is still, you still equip it, so we're going to call it an item. The best in slot aura for necromancy. That is going to be the Mahjarat Aura. Now you want to use this in most situations, like 9 times out of 10 you'll be using the Mahjarat Aura instead of anything else. You may use vampirism sometimes if you're tanking up through Zook or whatever and all that. It's still useful, but the Mahjarat Aura is by far the best. Now there's 2 ways to get this. You can either come to Death's Office and go to the rewards for the Reaper points, and then when you get down to the unlocked bit, you can see the Mahjarat Aura here is 1,000 Reaper points. Now this is a lot of Reaper points, so you can either grind out through this. Actually, right now, this would probably be the better way to do it if you can grind these points during the actual event, seeing as you're getting double Reaper points. It's going to take a long time still. You have to do this every single day. You may even then not be able to get it. I'm not 100% sure, but you can get it for 1,000 Reaper points here. Now the other way you can get it is by trading 3 bonds for this thing. Now usually I would suggest using the 3 bonds to actually get it, because it does overall cost less to do this. So once you have 3 bonds in your inventory, you can redeem it and then click on the Mahjarat option and it will give you that. So what the Mahjarat Aura does is it's just going to increase the damage that you deal by 5% for 1 hour. So this lasts once a day. You can reset it, and it is something that you will be using a lot. So obviously we don't have a Necromancy Aura, like we don't have one for the version of Reckless or the version of Maniacal, so the Mahjarat becomes the best way to increase your damage with this. You also get to increase your Divine Location cap by 5% as well, so if that's something that appeals to you, then you get something extra out of it too, but it's pretty much for the 5% damage. So if you haven't got this, get it on your list and start working towards it. It's pretty pricey to buy with the bonds. And it's also obviously very pricey to buy with the Reaper points, so consider what's best for you and get your hands on it. Next up is going to be the Salve Amulet E, as well as getting the Undead Slayer perk and the Undead Slayer ability codex. Now collectively, these are going to be pretty expensive in terms of the perks and the codex, but as for the Salve Amulet, you are going to be getting that for pretty much free. You just have to complete the quest for it and get the enchanted version of it, and you're good to go. The reason you want to have this as necromancers is because you're going to be fighting probably a lot of undead stuff, for example Raciel, and in fact Hermod as well, both count as undead enemies. So having access to the Salve Amulet and the Undead Slayer ability and the Undead Slayer perks are going to make it a hell of a lot easier to take these guys down. Your damage is going to fly through the roof using these, and they're definitely best in slot for when you do get to those places. There's other places in the game that can be useful, for example Taraket as well in Elite Dungeon 3, and if you were doing Slayer in general, you're going to get good use out of this. I also for some reason don't doubt that there'll be good use for this in the future as well, with some other necromancy released bosses probably along the way. I'll leave a link for all of the items mentioned in this video in the description, so you can go and check them out on how to actually get them, as there's not really enough time in here for me to show you how to get every single item without dragging it on for way too long. Next up, I'm actually going to talk about the Ring of Death. You remember that ring that got nerfed into absolute hell a little while ago, and people were like, oh, it's absolutely dead now. Well, it's kind of back. The Ring of Death is by far one of the better rings to have with necromancy, as long as your accuracy isn't 100%. If there's anywhere you go where your accuracy is less than 100%, and elite dungeons as well, you want to be using the Ring of Death. The reason being is this will be the best ring that doesn't ruin your accuracy at other places too, but for elite dungeons, the Ring of Death has a passive effect that will give you a 50% chance of restoring adrenaline by 1% for every 1,500 of your target's max life. So in most situations in Elite Dungeons, you can have a 50-50 chance of getting around 4 to 5% adrenaline back every time you kill something. Now, in Necromancy, when you're clearing dungeons, actually really struggles for adrenaline. Every now and again, you're going to want to use the scythe to clear out all the mobs and stuff in an area, and it costs about 60% adrenaline to use this full version of the scythe every single phase, every 3 levels of it, for start to finish. So when you use that 6% adrenaline, if you don't have the Ring of Death, you end up either needing to use adrenaline potions, or you just have to build up with basics again, which slows you down. So the Ring of Death is actually insanely good for elite dungeons with necromancy. And of course, if you go somewhere like Telos, for example, you don't want to use the Reaver's Ring because it's going to drop your accuracy even more, which just isn't really good. So in places like this, then the Ring of Death becomes your best in slot ring once again. So this ring has kind of been revived, and I'm glad to see it, because it's always nice to have a use for different things that you wouldn't normally use in the past. The next item we're going to talk about is obviously one that everybody would have forgotten about, because it's, no, I'm joking, it's probably one of the most common things on people's lists, and that's going to be the Igneous Calmore. Igneous Calmore, yeah, that one. It's the ZuK Cape. I'm pretty sure it's Calmore. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Maybe it's a roll Ura or something. I don't know. But either way, it's the ZuK Cape for Necromancy that got added with the skill, of course. Now, this is really, really, really important to get, because it buffs your Death Skull's ability by so freaking much. Like, Death Skull's kind of not sucks, but it's hard to use correctly without this actual cape, because in all reality, Death Skulls is a 100% adrenaline ability. It's an ultimate ability. It's going to cost you 100% adrenaline, and it is kind of still worth it even before that. It also only bounces 4 times before having the ZuK Cape. However, with the ZuK Cape, you will get a 60% adrenaline cost instead of 100%, so saving 40%, just like any other ultimate that ZuK Capes do affect. And then also it will jump from 4 bounces to 6 bounces, which is freaking huge, because this thing does so much damage each time. So having this upgrade is definitely something that you want to have. It's something that you can't miss, and if you don't quite have it yet, it is definitely something to add to your list of things to work towards. Like, ZuK is not by any means an easy feat to complete. Like, you have to go ahead and get work on this and practice. Necromancy definitely makes it a bit easier with the Ghost and the Darkness ability and using the tier 90 tank gear and whatnot. So that's definitely a good thing for most people trying to get to it. And you can, it's definitely obtainable for most people with tier 90 gear. This is something that you will definitely want to work on and you don't want to avoid. You'll have to do the fight kiln first, of course, to get yourself a Necromancy kiln cape, and then you work your way up to getting the ZuK Cape. And then this will be your best in slot cape for as long as I'm sure is going to be a long time. So you want to grab this and then maybe hard mode one day to get the combined version. It is worth noting though that if you do not want to do hard mode, having the regular version is identical to having the hybrid one. It just means that you don't have to switch if you do get the hard mode one. There's nothing else to benefit from it though. Next up, we have an item in my inventory that you're going to want to have with you all the time. And you've always had this probably with you every time you used to go PVMing as well, but it has such more value now if you're playing as Necromancy, in my opinion. I'm going to show you why as well. Let me get some adrenaline. We're going to be talking about the enhanced Excalibur. Now, this is an old item. It is super useful. Everybody knows about it, but it may be you haven't grabbed it because you just thought, it wasn't that big of a deal. And towards before Necromancy, I rarely used this thing, rarely used it, because things were just not, you didn't need it that much, okay? But now with this, I use it every single fight. Now the reason I use it every single fight is because if you conjure your conjures, which is interesting, and then use your life transfer ability straight away, you're going to extend the duration of them, but your health cuts in half. So when you start a fight, extend it, and then activate your enhanced Excalibur, and you immediately start healing up, whereas in the past, obviously, you wouldn't have had that. If you didn't have the enhanced Excalibur, if you didn't have the enhanced Excalibur, then look how fast I'm already back up to the higher level. With the Ghost and the enhanced Excalibur, you are absolutely fine. Obviously, if you're taking hits from a boss, this helps a lot. It's super useful, way more useful than I've had for it in the past, and something that I would 100% suggest you guys get and put in your inventory if you don't already have one. This is so damn good. It makes using life transfer so early on just not feel bad at all. If you didn't have this, you would have to eat some food maybe, or wait for your Ghost to heal you up a little bit more, risk dying in some places, so it's definitely worth grabbing. And last but definitely not least is going to be a different pocket slot than the Grimoire. Now the reason we're going to talk about this is because, one, the Grimoire is still super useful, and I want to talk about that in an upcoming video about why is that. But at the same time, the Scripture of Jazz is now one of the best in slot books to have for Necromancy. So if you don't have a Scripture of Jazz, then you definitely want to be looking at grabbing one, because the way it works is when the proc triggers, when the effect triggers on the Scripture of Jazz, what's going to happen is when it does proc, there's going to be a duration of time that you have to deal a lot of damage, which will store up inside the Scripture of Jazz as well. You'll still deal the damage to your target, but the Scripture of Jazz will basically keep track of how much damage you've done. And then at the end of that time duration, it will release that damage with a maximum hit of 30k. So you can get an extra hit of 30k if you do enough damage in the meantime. Now, Necromancy hits really, really hard. We know that its max hit cap is 30k itself anyway, and so getting this to charge up and actually cap out is really, really easy. Pretty much every time this procs, you're going to be hitting almost max hit with this, if not max hit every time, and so the Scripture of Jazz is insanely good with this style. Not to mention, the upkeep cost of this book is so cheap in comparison to, say, a Grimoire. The Grimoire is very expensive still. The Scripture of Jazz has definitely increased in price for using it, but they have nearly no comparison in cost per hour of using the actual book. So get yourself a Scripture of Jazz and take advantage of it in single target situations such as Raciel, such as Raksha. These places are all really good if you're not going to be using Grimoire. So take advantage of this scripture because it's going to save you a lot of money, and it also is still one of the best in slot books to use, and I use it anywhere that I don't initially just automatically plan to use the Grimoire, like Carapac in hard mode or Raksha, for example. Anywhere else, I'm pretty much using the Scripture of Jazz. There you go, there's 6 items that every necromancer should get their hands on. There's probably going to be more that'll pop up along the way as we figure stuff out, and there's probably going to be something that I could maybe make a part 2 with as well. So leave some comments down below if there's any that I've missed out. I think this is the main stuff, right? Like, obviously, other than saying, oh, you should get the tier 95 gear, then like obviously you should. But I'm thinking of things outside of necromancy that you should definitely grab, and these are the ones that came to mind. But if you have any other ones, like I say, let me know in the comments. If you found this video useful, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a like if you enjoyed. But other than that, channel members, your names will have been on screen through this outro. I appreciate it so much for supporting the channel. Thank you so much. And I'll catch you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.